Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to sitting down with CEO of Jewish Family Services, Perry Ohren. Perry, good to see you.
Nice
Good.
to see you, John.
Thanks for taking time to talk with me and the Think community today. I appreciate it. Perry, I've been looking forward to having you on and talking with you because, we're sitting here today. It's June 30th, 2020. And to me, the face of giving has completely changed over the last 3 months. And your organization over the last 100 years has basically had a consistent mission of helping people. And it seems like people now are need some extra help. But and so there's that element, and then the other arm of it, which from my perspective, and I love your perspective, just the whole concept of giving is different, right? It used
Sure.
to be, and so I want to dive into both of those today. But let's start out with, you guys have a mission over the last 100+ years of helping people. What are you seeing people need the most help with today?
So, what people need the most help with today isn't that dissimilar from what they needed help with 4 months ago. So, let me just briefly, if I can, describe what Jewish Family Service does in a few different big buckets,
Yeah.
and then talk to you a little bit about what the pandemic means to those buckets. So, the three big buckets for Jewish Family Service is helping older adults, senior citizens, to age in place in their homes. Most older adults want to stay in their homes, will stay in their homes. There's certainly a place for institutionalized settings, but most people will be our neighbors in houses, single family homes, apartments, condos. So we help older adults to age in place in their homes. Number two big bucket is what we call safety net services. Arguably everything we do is a safety net service, but when I talk about safety net services, it means when people don't have two nickels to rub together, they need help paying the utility bill. They have a financial situation. And again, all three of these things we'll go back to. What does a pandemic mean? The third thing is mental health and wellness services, another big bucket at Jewish Family Service, where we provide counseling, aka psychotherapy, behavioral health services, in other words. And those three buckets, everybody, if you think about it, on the planet right now, maybe you're not an older adult, but in those three buckets, there's an increased need. There's a broader and a deeper demand for each of those. And that will continue because even though people right now in this country, in the US, might not be having financial troubles because unemployment is still kicked in and they're still furloughed, blah, blah, blah. In a month, too many months, too many years from now, people will be hurting big time financially and need to rely on places like Jewish Family Service for help.
Thanks for that description. And I've been familiar with your organization for a long time. I sit on the board of Hebrew Free Loan, and we actually refer a lot of people to Jewish Family Services. So thanks for all that you do and for the organization. It's an amazing organization. But let's talk about for a second, right? So we kind of see the headwinds coming down in front of us. And so how does an organization today, like Jewish Family Services, or any organization for that matter, get in front of that, right? Get the word out to people so they just know how to forecast, right, and project their potential issues. I always find, at least in business, and a lot of times, sometimes people don't deal with it until it's really right in front of them. But now we kind of have a little bit of a roadmap that can help a little bit. So how do you guys do that over at Jewish Family Services to help your people?
Sure. So as I understand your question, and I'll pick on Hebrew Free Loan because you referenced Hebrew Free Loan. One way that a Jewish Family Service or a Hebrew Free Loan or a Yad Ezra or a JARC or Kadima, and I can name all of the organizations within an organized Jewish community in Detroit in this case, one of the ways that we do this is we've been doing it for a long time. So if we've been around for 100 years and Hebrew Free Loan's been around for 150 years, somehow there's some name recognition on your street or my street about there's some help out there in the world, and maybe it's Hebrew Free Loan, maybe it's Jewish Family Service. The other way that we do it is that we stand strongly with our sister agencies and our funders, like the Hebrew Free Loans of the world, like the Jewish Federations of the world, like the United Ways of the world. So important to say the Jewish Family Service, while we're Jewish, that's our first name. And 100 years ago, of course, there was a need for a Jewish family service for Jews by Jews. Now we're Jewish and we're non-sectarian. So we're here to serve for sure the Jewish community, but very important to say to your viewers that we're here to serve the broader community as well.
Yeah.
So the way that we get out in front of that is mostly through our good reputation and through people like you and folks tuning in right now to have a reflexive thought like, oh, I think that's an organization that can be helpful to me. But the reality is most people have no clue about that we have 3 buckets or 25 buckets or whatever. So through opportunities like this, we get the word out.
And, I find that sometimes I even get confused with all of the different organizations out there, not just, Jewish Family Services or Jewish Vocational Service. I mean, there's so many different groups. There's so many different charities. I think it brings up a really good point where marketing is so important. Marketing and messaging and clarifying the message so people know kind of where to go. And so when you're in a situation like this, where when people are in more of a panic mode, right, a panic on top of the potential panic that they're already in, how does Jewish Family Services kind of, sit back, reverse engineer and say, hey, this is how we need to maybe get our message out there clearer so we can actually help more people. This is what we're going to maybe do from a marketing perspective so we can bring clarity into the market and then help more people, which is in line with your vision.
Certainly, that's our vision. Our mission is to help people. So one thing that we do and one thing that our organized community has done over the last 2.5 years is we've created something that we think really lessens barriers called J Help. So it's not dissimilar from United Way's 211 line. In other words, if anybody in the Metro Detroit area has an issue problem, they need to find a resource, they could dial up 211 or chat up 211. So J Help is a marketing thing through the Federation of the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, where you call J Help, and you don't have to have the secret decoder ring to figure out what the difference between Hebrew Free Loan is and Jewish Family Service and JVS. J Help is the front client-facing entity that will listen to you, the caller, the chatter, and understand what your problem is and know what all of the possible solutions are at Jewish Family Service, at our sister agencies and agencies in the broader community, and help get you to where you need to go. So through J Help, we have enslaved the beast, but we're conquering the beast.
Right. That's really amazing. And so how do you, that number, what's that phone number?
Oh, I should know that, shouldn't I? So somebody smarter than me would be Googling it right now and putting it up there.
All right, we'll Google it in a minute, Perry. But that's interesting because I'm 48. I've been on a lot of boards, many of which have been Jewish boards over the last 25 years, and I've never heard of that.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's good. I'm glad I'm doing this interview. I think being a brand ambassador of anything is really important, but sometimes being a brand ambassador to lead them to something like J Help is key.
Well, part of an issue for a nonprofit agency, which I would call a social impact agency, is the reason that we don't market perhaps the way that our counterparts in the for-profit world do is because we have this double bottom line of a financial bottom line and a social impact bottom line. We sometimes get worried, and this is why we don't have huge marketing budgets, that if we market broadly and if there's an increased demand, that we might not be able to supply what people need when they're demanding our services because we have a finite amount of resources to provide the services that we provide to the public. So it's not as if you come on down, we'll just make another ice cream cone and make, whatever the margin is on the ice cream cone. Thanks for flashing the J Help number.
Hey, Hey, you taught me something new today, because just me knowing this will be able to help and direct a lot of people that I'm talking to, even at Hebrew Free Loan. So that's great. That's great nuggets. So let's talk about just some of the different buckets as far as what Jewish Family Services do. You said that your second bucket is, being a safety net service for people, just quoting you, who don't have 2 nickels to rub together. And the average American really doesn't have $500 in their savings account. And so this isn't just a Jewish Family Services thing. It's a global thing. And so I think that, what types of services do you guys offer where you can start educating people about money and savings and things of that nature?
So a variety of services, but the one thing the Jewish Family Service is best at, I would say, is helping people navigate the various service delivery streams out there. So in other words, there are things and people and agencies out there, not that there's every answer or solution within a Jewish or a broader community, but most people have no clue.
Yeah.
What is welfare? What are food stamps? What does the Salvation Army do? How do I get this stuff or that stuff? So a Jewish Family Service, we have social workers who know that stuff. So when you, me, whoever are struggling and can't pay that utility bill or whatever your story is, you can partner with us and we can say to you, oh, you need to turn over this rock over here because the Department of Health and Human Services will give you welfare or food stamps. Or, hey, how about an interest-free loan at Hebrew Free Loan if you qualify, et cetera. So one of the huge things that we do in the safety net space is to help people navigate not just our service delivery stream, but all of the service delivery streams out there.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about what you're talking about, and I just kind of want to highlight and kind of discuss in a little bit more detail is, in anything, I think in life, and I see this a lot of times as a business coach in business, people are afraid to ask for help. And, and I think the more that we have conversations like this, the more we talk about all these options, the more we talk about a hotline, the more we talk about all this, it increases the amount of courage, I think, and takes away the shame of asking for help. And so, your thought. I just think that's really important.
So 80% of life, whatever is showing up. So we're all stigmatized to think like, oh my gosh, I'm weak, or whatever the word is for you, to ask for help. A reality in yours, my, everybody's life is throughout our lives, we will have challenges, crises, transitions. God willing, we'll all get older and there'll be challenges. I need help, somebody changing the light bulb at some point in my life.
Yeah.
So if we can normalize that through this conversation or any conversation, and if you can ask a Jewish Family Service, a J-Help, a 211, a United Way for help, there might be help on the other end, even though you might have to jump over a couple hurdles to get there in your own ego, if you will.
Yeah. It's giving with dignity and asking with help and letting down your guard and leaving your ego on the sidelines is definitely key. Let's talk about the first bucket, because the first bucket that you talked about are helping elderly, and the elderly are the people who have seemed, and again, I'm not basing this on complete data, but seem to have been having the hardest time with COVID, and they seem to be affected the most. Yeah. And so how as Jewish Family Services, how is that with the pandemic impacting you guys, and how are you helping?
Sure. So let me describe what we do on a normal day and then talk about a pandemic day. Because this, John, is absolutely my and our biggest worry about older adults the longer that this goes on, and there's no indication that this is going to be over soon. So on a normal day, what happens is somebody, I'll give the illustration. Somebody from another city, let's say St. Louis, calls Jewish Family Services and says, hey, I've got a mom. She's 85. She's being discharged from fill in the blank hospital tomorrow. She's been there for 2 weeks. And my brother lives in Seattle and my sister lives in Fenton and she's just after mom's money or whatever. And you're Jewish Family Service. Can you please take care of her? So our response is, sure. We'll go out to mom's house, to grandma's house, whatever. We will check in on her, see what she might need, get her tucked in.
Yeah.
Put services in place, whether services the Jewish Family Service provides and or others. So that might be escorted transportation to the doctor's appointment, or home delivered meals through National Council of Jewish Women, or home care services through ABC Home Care or XYZ Home Care. So we'll get all of that in place. And guess what? 85-year-old mom, grandma, Bubby, she's not going to get younger or less frail. She's going to get older and more frail, the longer she lives. So that 85-year-old new person we're serving, client, will stay with us, hopefully, for a long time and have more and more and more needs as time goes on. So enter the pandemic center stage big time. And we are no longer able to go out to, in the same way, to grandma's house to do that assessment, to see whether or not, there's a rug there that's a trip hazard, or there's no food in the cupboard or whatever. We can now, on the phone or through Zoom, talk to grandma, talk to the adult children, talk to whoever, to try to get as complete of a picture, but that's still a two-dimensional picture. It's not a three-dimensional picture because we're not there. And we're then able to put most, but not all, of the services in place that we used to. We wind up paying for a lot of home care services. So home care services are services, think mom needs help getting up in the morning. She needs help scrambling an egg. She needs help figuring out how to go to bed. So those home care workers, we pay millions of dollars a year of our $15 million budget to the home care industry to do that. Those workers, thank God, are still showing up. So that's still going on. But the longer that this goes on, and the more that we're not able to get into people's homes with our social workers, the more problematic it becomes. Second, that was number one, right?
Yeah.
Second is transportation. So with older adults, we, in a normal year, do 30,000 rides a year. So we're doing escorted rides, not curb to curb, but door through door, for frail older adults to get to their doctor's appointments or chemotherapy or dialysis or whatever's going on. So since the pandemic, we are only doing very essential appointments like chemotherapy and dialysis, leaving a lot of older adults high and dry in terms of, now the doctor's offices are back open, getting to those regular maintenance doctor's visits. So we're trying to figure out how to do that. It's going to cost an organization like Jewish Family Service more money, because we used to do that in a carpool kind of a way. We pick up that grandmother and then that grandfather and then drive up Orchard Lake Road. Now we're not going to be able to put two people in the back seat. We're going to have to do one at a time, which means that we have to grow our infrastructure in order to do the same supply that we used to do.
Yeah, which means you need more
drivers and cars.
drivers, cars, donations, grants, etc. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so let me ask you that, Perry. So on this, right? So you have, because I wanted to talk about just, what giving looks like today. People's businesses have been affected by COVID. Companies are making less. People are making less. Many people are on unemployment. And so it's almost as if the face of giving has changed a little bit, right? No longer do you need to give $100 or $500 or $1,000. It's, I find organizations that I'm talking to are asking for $5, $1, right? It's whatever you can give to help. And so how has your formula for asking for fund, from a fundraising perspective changed, in today's world, which, could be like this for the next bit?
Well, so let me start at where you left off for what's the next bit. So it will be like this for the next bit, but also it's important for me and you and all of us to keep in mind that this next bit for a Jewish Family Service, even if a vaccine happens in 6 months, the aftermath, the wake of this pandemic for an organization like Jewish Family Service and the folks that we serve will last for years. So we're still helping people who fell down in 2008-9 from the Great Recession then, even though your portfolio might have gotten back up and running in 2011 or whatever. A lot of people's didn't, and a lot of people lost their job and are hurting. So I use that analogous to what's going on now, and I know that we're going to need lots of help for many, many years moving forward, depending on how long this lasts. So to your question, what are we doing? So we're trying to prepare for the long run. We're an organization that relies on generosity and philanthropy from foundations, from grantors, but also from $5 donations and $18 donations and $100 donations, whether that's selling tickets to our so-called gala, our spotlight event, or having an annual campaign. So we're very, very worried, even though some dollars continue to come in from individuals as well as from foundations. And by the way, a word on the foundation community. The foundation community, of which a Jewish Family Service relies on heavily, has been amazing in these times.
Yeah.
Whether that can or will continue, we'll see, because foundations are also taking a hit. And so we're not sure whether a year from now, the relaxed guidelines, the different generosity that's being shown to us and others will continue. So the way that we're playing a long game, we have our regular funders who are stepping up and who are raising money for us. So the beauty of many organizations, or Jewish Family Service in Metropolitan Detroit, is that we rely on some big funders like the Jewish Federation, and they're doing some heavy lifting. They're kind of saying to us, hey, stay in the service lane. That's what your job is. You're really good at doing the service stuff. We're going to do the heavy lift over here fundraising wise. Although Federation and others like United Way, they're worried too. What happens, they wind up raising X million dollars a year. What happens their next go around when people's portfolios have taken a hit? Will they be raising the same amount of money and then be able to or not be able to distribute those dollars to places like Hebrew Free Loan or Jewish Family Service or the Salvation Army in the same way? So we're not doing fundraising wildly now. We had to cancel our spotlight event. We're trying to figure out what this is going to look like in a pandemic world when people aren't going to want to sit next to each other. Will a watch party bring in the same amount of money as going to a venue to see? We were going to be bringing in this guy, Gary Goldman, who many people have heard of. He's a comedian who struggles with depression. He did this thing on HBO called The Great Depression, sort of some stand up on his own depression. And people were excited about coming and watching him and laughing with him and with us. But who's going to want to go see Gary Goldman in person for a couple of years? So we're worried. We're very worried and need to get dollars to put fuel in our literal and figurative tank.
Yeah. I find that this happens so suddenly that and the market and so many businesses or nonprofits were really humming along in a strong way. And now, at least a lot of the people I'm talking to, the strategic meetings I'm in, it's really, they're very different now. It's, here's plan A, here's plan B, here's plan C, here's plan D. And so, as a nonprofit, are you all doing the same as well? Like just
planning,
yeah.
Yeah, so for sure. So there are various scenarios that a guy like me or organizations like Jewish Family Service are trying to consider. The plan D or plan E or plan Z might force, pardon me, many organizations to go belly up or to consider merging or to be subsumed by another. This happened a lot, at the end of last or two decades, in 2008, 2009 recession forced a lot of nonprofit organizations to cease to exist. We were lucky because of, again, largesse of funders to be able to grow our infrastructure in those times. But we're certainly trying to figure out how will we make it through the pandemic? Will we, from the lessons learned in the pandemic, will we look very different afterwards? And who should we be hitching up with, if anybody? So there's lots of scenario planning, like in any business.
I don't know if you have this, but this would be my 2 cents. Last week, I had a Young Entrepreneurs Week, and I interviewed 18, basically Gen Zers, right? My recommendation to you and really to anybody is to get a good handful of 14 to 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds on your board. Because I have a lot of faith in the human spirit and that we will absolutely persevere. This too shall pass. But I also have faith in ideas. And this next decade was already going to be a decade of people adapting, major change. They say that by 2030, 85% of the jobs that exist do not exist today. 75% of the global workforce will be millennials by 2025. That doesn't even include the Gen Zs. And so the decade was already poised for evolving in a major, major way. And COVID just accelerated it and I think raised our level of consciousness and got us more present to innovation. And so to me, I think the youth are going to have great ideas of how things will evolve and change. And then the culture will then, be wrapped around that and from within it too. So, but I hear you on what is going on and what it looks like. But But yeah, those young entrepreneurs were incredibly dynamic. Let me ask you a question. You talk about, organizations merging and things of that nature. What does the future of not just Jewish Family Services, but what does the future of, there's so many nonprofits all vying for dollars right now and over the next couple of years. What does the future of nonprofits, all the groups that are there to help people, what does the face of nonprofits look like when you talk about merging and things of that nature?
So I there's a lot of thoughts I have about this, but I think there's some conventional wisdom that defined small nonprofits might not be able to make it. And part of that is because of reimbursement structures. So we could get into the complications of, who does Jewish Family Service and others, who do we collect money from, where do we get reimbursements from, Medicare, et cetera, the government, and then also the changing face of philanthropy. So whereas old organizations like a Jewish Family Service, let's say, who have relied on the generosity of generations of families who simply give to a Jewish Family Service because that's what dad did, or my name's on the building or whatever, that's changing. So that 14-year-old or that 19-year-old who might have had a grandfather who gave to my organization might care less about my organization. That 14 or 19-year-old, however, cares about the work that we do. So if we're working to end homelessness, or if we're making sure that there's food on someone's table, that 17-year-old cares deeply about that. They don't care that there's a place like Jewish Family Service does it. They just want the person served. So I think what the other answer to this, in terms of, should we all be thinking about merging, is that there is some kind of beauty in being bigger in this case. And a lot of that is because of philanthropy. A lot of that is because the government is changing, and it's less easy for an organization like Jewish Family Service simply to live on the dollars that a government gives me or us or them, because it takes $1.50 for me to provide that service that they're providing $1 for. So I could raise that 25 cents and make it $1.25, but where's that other 25 cents going to come in? So a lot of us are talking about, exploring, putting our toe in the water of how should we be looking differently, along with sort of, why shouldn't we be like the 14 and 19-year-olds? And I tuned in a little bit last week to hear your son and other people. Why shouldn't we be entrepreneurial too?
Correct.
So what kind of social enterprises can we do? What kind of revenue streams can we introduce to our businesses that might actually make money in our nonprofit? Then they could help us fund the mission that we know we're not going to be making a lot of money on, that costs us a lot of money.
Yeah, I agree with that, Perry. I agree with that. I mean, a lot of those ideas, and I'm sure there's many. I'm happy to brainstorm with you offline on a couple. So I think that's great. So a couple questions in closing, right? Well, first, before we get into kind of some last minute questions, tell everybody how they can get a hold of Jewish Family Services, you, and all that other great stuff.
All right. So our website, you'd be able to Google pretty easily, is jfsdetroit.org. So everything that you need is on our website, jfsdetroit.org, or go friend us on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever. Our telephone number at Jewish Family Service, if you need help, John, you put up the J-Help number before another number just to make it more, use that number. There's another number too. There's lots of numbers.
Well, give me your number.
So my number is 248-592-2302.
592. What is it? 592.
248-592-2302.
Right.
Or email me, first initial last name at jfsdetroit.org.
Yeah, you guys do incredible work, and you've got such a great reputation. I know many people you've helped. Again, I mean, we refer a lot of people over when we're helping people with Hebrew Free Loan, and the work you do from the seniors to the financial to the counseling is really just amazing. And you always not only give, but give while allowing people to hold their dignity. So I appreciate everything that you guys do.
Thanks, John. I just want to say in response to that, I just want you and others to know, and I know time, that we're not just there for poor people. I get that we can be there for people who don't have the two nickels to rub together, but we can be there for you, for me, for our relatives who might have a couple nickels, but are going through tough times. We're all going through tough times. Whether you need counseling or help with mom or grandma or whatever, we're there for everybody. Jewish Family Service is there for the whole community.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. In closing, I'll ask you this.
Sure.
We did watch some of the interviews last week. For those of the kids graduating college today, right? It's a little bit of a different world than they anticipated 4 months ago. What piece of advice or wisdom would you give them?
Follow their passion. So, I talked about ending homelessness and making sure people have, aren't food insecure, have food on their table. So I think that it's going to take that 17-year-old or that 22-year-old that you're referencing to sort of figure out, I care about this, and not think that you or me, dad, is going to figure that out, or that the other generations have figured out, but it's their time to step up to figure out whether they're going to do it on their own or whether they're going to go to Gleaners or Yad Ezra or whatever the organization is, to sort of make sure that people have an equal chance and equity in our world, because there's a lot of hurt out there, and it's up to that 22-year-old and 14-year-old to figure out how they're going to plug in and help out others.
Well said. Well said. Perry, I appreciate you being on today. Thanks for educating everybody. Thanks for all the, excuse me, thanks for all the beautiful work that you and your team do to make the world a better place and help people. So thanks so much.
Thanks for having me, John. Thanks.
Thanks, Perry. Hold on 2 seconds.